Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a first look at a fully maxed out level 50 Therian Enamorus in the Master League. Now these battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, Alpha Club Y2K, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now Therian Enamorus has a pretty wide move pool. For fast moves it is Fairy Wind and Astonish, and for charge moves it is Mystical Fire, Fly, Earth Power, and Moonblast. Now, I do think when it comes to the Master League, there's a wide variety of different potential move options to test out. In this video, Alpha is using Fairy Wind, Fly, and Mystical Fire. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. And in game number 1, he's off to a pretty nice start leading Zekrom into Zacian. Zekrom has a winning matchup in his Zacian because the Metal Claws are resistant, meaning that Zacian's close combat will simply fail to take the knockout. Alpha, however, is going to be investing in his Zacian's HP, putting up the shield, and then immediately returning fire with Fusion Bolt. Fusion Bolt is shielded up by the Zacian, but Zekrom already has more energy. Oh no, disaster! Accidentally threw 2 Dragon Breaths in the move instead of 1, and that gets caught onto Zygarde. That is absolutely tragic. The good news is Zygarde is completely walled off by the Therian Enamorus, but that triple resisted Fusion Bolt catch hurt my soul. Oh my goodness. Zygarde, I mean, they should be stuck throwing Outrages here because they're usually on Outrage and Earthquake, or I guess they could have Bulldoze, but Bulldoze would also be double resisted. Enamorus will go for yet another fly at the Zygarde. Zygarde gonna be pivoting out and sending in Lunala. Lunala gonna be immediately debuffed by the Mystical Fire. Mystical Fire really not gonna do much to Lunala, but Lunala being debuffed is a definite plus. In comes Zekrom. Zekrom more than happy to absorb debuff Lunala energy. It is going to be the Shadow Ball, and that actually does not hit that hard after the debuff. Zekrom going to go for a Fusion Bolt. Fusion Bolt will not be enough to secure the knockout. Had the crunch, but this way Zekrom gets farmed. Zekrom would love to try and make a charge stack into the Zygarde, and does! Unfortunately, it's only the Fusion Bolt. This is triple resisted. Somehow this is the second triple resisted move thrown at a Zygarde in this game. Opponent pivots Zacian into Enamorus, but Enamorus will immediately fire off Mystical Fire. Mystical Fire gets the shield, and that's gonna cost them as there is a way harder hitting fire move in the back. In comes Kyurem White. Kyurem White shields up the close combat. It's a CMP tie to the Fusion Flare. They had so much energy on the Zacian, and it's all for naught. Zacian gets KO'd. In comes Zygarde, and that's a good game. Hopping into the next match, leading Zekrom into Zacian once again. Zacian on basically every Master League team, so running a Pokemon that can do well into it like the Zekrom is a definite plus. Zekrom farms up a massive amount of energy, hoping the opponent is going to throw first, but they're just going to keep farming. Fusion Bolt lands. Zekrom already at Fusion Bolt number 2, and they are going to have to give back a shield. Getting a shield advantage to set up the Kyurem White could also be a very nice strategy for this team. Zekrom knows close combat just simply will not KO, so Zekrom easy no shield. Opponent going to be staying in this matchup, playing to the CMP tie, and Zekrom is going to try and eliminate the final shield from Zacian, or just straight up eliminate the Zacian. So one shield comes up from the Zekrom, Fusion Bolt will be shielded, and there's the aggressive pivot into the Kyurem White. Kyurem White puts up the shield. Zacian does have quite a bit of energy. They go for the close combat, and they pivot out into their own Kyurem White. Unfortunately, they're just too far behind on energy, which means they are about to get absolutely devastated by Ice Burn. Ice Burn lands. That's good night, Kyurem. Back in comes the Zacian. Zacian trying to get to a charge stack, and it's just not going to get there. Kyurem makes the Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare lands. That'll be a KO. In the back is Palkia. In comes Enamorus. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. Ooh, we got some spice on the lead in the next match. Zekrom into Kartana. Kartana is on Fury Cutter and Sacred Sword this season. Even a resisted Fusion Bolt will deal devastating damage to Kartana because it's a Kartana. It just has no bulk to speak of whatsoever, but in exchange it has a monster attack stat. Sacred Sword lands. That does do some pretty solid damage for a non-stab Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword number 2 is going to connect, and there's a pivot out into Kyurem. Dragon Breath is doing some pretty significant damage to Kartana, but Kartana's pacing is so fast that Kyurem is probably going to have to eventually throw a Fusion Flare. Opponent tries for a Fusion Flare catch onto Zygarde, and that's going to cost them. They're about to lose their entire Zygarde. Ice Burn is going to be shielded up. Kyurem trying to race to Ice Burn number 2 and gets there. Opponent could have thrown the Outrage, but they overfarmed. They lose their entire Zygarde. That's just gone in a split second. What do they have in the back? They're not going to show just yet. They send in Kartana, and they're just going to top left. Unfortunately, Enamorus stays on the bench for that one. We see a very familiar lead in the next match, as for the third time in 4 games, Zekrom leads into Zacian. Looks like there were some connection issues there, unfortunately, so Zekrom does miss a few Dragon Breaths. Zacian close combats and then retreats into a Dialga save swap. Dialga immediately under pressure from the Outrage. Outrage is going to be no-shielded, and that is the best-case scenario. Now in comes Kyurem White, and if Kyurem White can get a one-shield farm down, it's going to be very, very close. That would be massive. Kyurem's going to try for it. It's going to be close, and the Dialga faints right as they make the Iron Head. Kyurem is now loaded on energy. Back in comes the Zacian. The Zacian's going to get torn to smithereens by Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare no-shielded. They just lost almost their entire health bar, and Kyurem's firing off Fusion Flare number 2. This should work out pretty well because the opponent should have to throw energy here, because if they don't, that's going to be a third Fusion Flare reached by the Kyurem, and that will force their final shield. This Zacian committed to a full farm down, sacrificing everything for energy. Enamorus answered with a Zygarde, and this game is over. The opponent should just top left at this point. Enamorus will get to spam out flies. The way to guarantee this win is just, as the Enamorus player, always farm up to the back-to-back moves. That way when Zacian switches in, you can't hold 2 Behemoth Blades. You can just shield the Behemoth Blade, click Mystical Fire, and win the game. And this Zygarde forced to go for double resisted outrages. They are just not doing a lot. Fly is going to land. Enamorus farms up to the back-to-back as the opponent sends in Zacian. Zacian, easy shield here, and then just click Mystical Fire. They go for the close combat, and Enamorus tries to farm down. Oh no! I think this is the Behemoth Blade. It is! No! Tried to go for the flex, and unfortunately that's going to cost the game. Could have just thrown the Mystical Fire, but tried to get fancy and farm down, and unfortunately that game will end in defeat. We see a neutral lead in the next match, Zekrom into Palkia. Zekrom will have a pacing advantage here, able to reach the Fusion Bolt before the Spatial Rend is available. Fusion Bolt obviously will not knock out the Palkia, but it would get them pretty low. Palkia puts up the shield. These Dragon Breaths are shredding Zekrom. At this point, I think you kind of just have to sack the Zekrom, but Zekrom's sacrifice is going to be for Kyurem's gain, because Kyurem is going to look to try and go for a one-shield reverse farm, because Kyurem energy is absolutely terrifying in this meta. Palkia full sense of Spatial Rend, that's all they're going to get. Kyurem gets a monster farm down, in comes Zacian, and at this point, I'm assuming this game is probably already just over, because Kyurem gets to fire off the back-to-back Fusion Flares before they can even make it to a single close combat, and this Zacian is just getting completely overrun. Zacian puts up the shield. Kyurem will make the Fusion Flare. Before they get there, the switch into Enamorus. Enamorus better hope this is the close combat. It is the close combat. It's double resisted, but unfortunately, there's more steel types in the back as out comes Duskmane. Duskmane gonna be debuffed with Mystical Fire. Looks like Mystical Fire does come pretty close to two-shotting. Enamorus will get the shield, double up on Mystical Fires, and make life very uncomfortable for the opponent, but Enamorus didn't shield. I don't know if he just forgot to shield or what happened, but Kyurem doesn't have the HP to win this game. Oh no, that was gonna be the Enamorus show, but unfortunately Enamorus got rocked by a Sunsteel Strike. Tricky lead in the next match is Zekrom into Kyurem White. Kyurem White has a lot of stats, but this Kyurem White is on the wrong moveset. This Kyurem White is on Ice Fang. Ice Fang used to be the preferred moveset, but now the Dragon Breath has been reworked. Dragon Breath on Kyurem White is the way to go. The Ice Fangs plus Fusion Flare fail to take the knockout on Zekrom. Zekrom forces the shield with Outrage, and now the switch into the Kyurem White mirror. Kyurem White not going to go for a one-shield farm down like it has in previous battles. Instead, going to fire off the Fusion Flare immediately to deny energy. Fusion Flare takes the KO, in comes Duskmane Necrozma, and Duskmane Necrozma is about to get melted by these Fusion Flares. Fusion Flare number 1 from the Kyurem is gonna land, and it looks like that should set up a Dragon Breath farm down. The opponent, clearly they just have nothing for Kyurem White. They're gonna be sending in their final Pokemon. It's revealed to be Metagross, and yeah, this game is just over. Unfortunately, Enamorus didn't really have anything that it could do in this game. Double Steel backlines will always be tough. Oh no, and the catch. That catch wasn't needed to win the game, but it will absolutely slam the door on any hopes the opponent had. Back in comes Kyurem White, making it to the Fusion Flare, and this Fusion Flare will be devastating to Metagross. Fusion Flare lands, Metagross hangs on 1 HP. Hey, at the very least, Enamorus will get to do something in this game. Enamorus hits the field, Fairy Winding down the Metagross. In comes Duskmane, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. Tricky lead in the next match, Zekrom into Tyranitar. This is the non-Shadow Tyranitar, which means they don't really have the damage output of the Shadow, but they also tank hits quite a bit better. Like that Fusion Bolt is a pretty comfortable survive for the Tyranitar. Zekrom now has to decide, is it the Stone Edge, is it the Brutal Swing? It's the Brutal Swing, and unfortunately that does get shielded. That's going to set Tyranitar up to make the Stone Edge. Zekrom is going to be no shielding. Stone Edge connects, and Zekrom unfortunately loses the 1-0s. In comes Kyurem. Kyurem gets a nice farm down. In comes Ho-Oh. And unfortunately, this would normally be a good matchup for Kyurem, but Kyurem being down a shield means that this game is probably going to end in defeat. Opponent just fires off the Brave Bird immediately though, not even building up to a Sacred Fire. They Brave Bird, they're going to be dipping, and they have Reshiram in the back. One win gone. That's full set of the Iceberg and hoping that they just disregard their Reshiram, but they do not. They put up the shield, and in comes Enamorus. Enamorus is about to get absolutely shredded by a Fusion Flare. Fusion Flare will not knock out, but no, they have Stone Edge. That didn't KO though. Stone Edge, I was expecting that to knock out, but Enamorus hangs on, makes the fly, and does get the Reshiram low. In comes Kyurem. Opponent switches back into the Ho-Oh. This is going to be close, trying to make the Ice Burn, getting to the Ice Burn. Did that Incinerate land? If it didn't, there's a chance, but it did. The Incinerate damage landed, Reshiram snipes down, and unfortunately, that's going to be a loss. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Zekrom into Keldeo. Now, this is not your normal Keldeo. This is the Keldeo Resolute form, the new form that dropped in the game pretty recently. But regardless of what form it is, Keldeo is not a big fan of Fusion Bolt, so the fact that they're staying in this matchup as a water type is a pretty big tell that there's something in the back that also does not want to see Zekrom. Could be a flyer on the back, maybe something like a Ho-Oh. Zekrom, more than happy to try and press the advantage. At the very least, Zekrom wants to try and grab their final shield, because there's nothing that Kyurem White loves more than a 1-0 shield scenario. Fusion Bolt is going to be shielded up. Keldeo cannot get the farm down. They're forced to fire off energy. This will set up some pretty nice farm for the Enamorus. Enamorus can farm all the way down, and then once Keldeo is out of the way, and Kyurem is highly likely to sweep. Enamorus, more than happy to no shield as Keldeo will fire off the Aqua Jet. In comes Kyurem, and Kyurem farms down. Kyurem up energy and up a shield, and clearly gonna win this game as the opponent immediately resigns the match. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Zekrom into Landorus. Safe switch into Kyurem White. Kyurem White gonna be answered with a Zacian, but this is not really an answer. Even though Fusion Flare does not take the one-hit KO, it will inflict devastating damage onto the Zacian. Zacian gets rocked. Kyurem farming up, putting up the shield as the opponent will more than likely fire off the close combat. Even though close combat does debuff them due to the fact that they triple resist Dragon, the Dragon Breath still don't really add up even with the -2 defense. Shield comes up on the Fusion Flare. Kyurem trying to get there, but unfortunately unable to do so. This will, however, set up a pretty nice farm down for Zekrom. In comes Zekrom. Zekrom does get a ton of energy. Zekrom's going to try and race to the move. Back in comes the Landorus, making it to the outrage, but losing charge attack priority. Sandsear Storm will not knock out, but it will put this Zekrom deep into the red. It's all up to Enamorus to try and win this game. Outrage is going to land. In comes Enamorus in the back. Now that's a mon I have not seen in the Master League in a very long time. There is Togekiss. This is a battle of the fairy flying types. Enamorus will debuff with Mystical Fire. The opponent didn't build up to Dazzling Gleam, so this is only Psyshock. But no, it's actually Ancient Power. I just have no idea what's going on here. Why is there a Togekiss in the Master League? Why does it have Ancient Power? Nothing is making sense. But Enamorus spamming out these Mystical Fires is making life difficult for the opponent. Enamorus, I'm surprised they didn't go for the Mystical Fire there. There wasn't really ever a reason to go for Fly. They go for the Fly, but if they had gone for the Mystical Fire, then they would have put the Togekiss down at -3. -2 Ancient Power will not take the knockout. Oh, tried to bank a charge attack, but unfortunately Togekiss makes Ancient Power number 2. Ancient Power will take the KO. In comes Zekrom. Zekrom gets a full farm down. The opponent not pivoting into the Landorus is going to cost them, as Landorus will actually get knocked out by a Fusion Bolt. I don't know what was going on in that game, but the important thing is it ended in a win. Hopping into the final match, leading Zekrom into Xerneas. Now this is a very bad lead. This team is triple weak to Xerneas, as Enamorus does not have a winning matchup there either. Zekrom's going to try and play this out and try and get the Xerneas as low as possible. Fusion Bolt landing is a very good start, but Moonblast is going to erase the Zekrom from the board. Opponent throws a close combat for no actual reason, and that's going to cause them to lose the zeros. As Zekrom hangs on, makes the Fusion Bolt, and there's a pivot into Enamorus. Unfortunately, Enamorus is about to get destroyed by a Moonblast, is forced to put up the shield. Opponent sends in Lunala, and this is a moment when Enamorus does wish that it was running Astonish, as Astonish would be double super effective and shredding through Lunala. Mystical Fire not going to do much, but the goal is just to try and slow down Lunala. Lunala has incredibly strong neutrals, and even a -1 Shadow Ball just hits way too hard on the Enamorus. Enamorus fires off the fly. That is going to be getting Lunala pretty low. In comes Kyurem trying for a farm down but doesn't get it, and unfortunately that is going to lose the game. Because after shielding the Moonblast, now the opponent can bring in the Xerneas. Xerneas is one off the close combat, and that's going to do devastating damage to the Kyurem. Fusion player will be shielded. Xerneas overfarms for no reason. They had the close combat, but they didn't throw it, and that's going to cost them. They lose charge attack priority. They get knocked out, and in the back is Reshiram. Reshiram farming up to the Fusion player just for it to be caught onto the Zekrom. Somehow, this game should not be a win, but it is going to end in victory as the opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. And now some final thoughts on Therian and Enamorus and its potential place in the Master League. First off, it's pretty difficult to be a fairy type that isn't a Zacian. Xerneas has an OP fast move, and outside of Xerneas and Zacian, there aren't really many viable fairy types. Primarina is still used at lower elo, but even Primarina just doesn't really do what you want it to do now that the dragons have a lot more variety to them instead of just being Palkia all the time. So when it comes to Enamorus, I think it's in a bit of a tricky spot where it doesn't end up outperforming Xerneas and it doesn't end up outperforming Zacian. It has so many possible move combinations though that I imagine it could probably find a bit of a unique niche. Potentially with Astonish, because with Astonish as its fast move, then it could be a Lunala Slayer. So you could potentially have a Pokemon that could take down Lunala, could also take down the dragons, and that could be a bit of an interesting niche, and it could even potentially be used as a safe switch, because with like Astonish and then Mystical Fire to threaten super effective damage into counter swap Zacians, I could see that having kind of a unique role that no other fairy type could fill. As for the current moveset, Fairy Wind, Mystical Fire, and Fly, it's a very efficient moveset, which is really nice, but with such strong fairies already, I think it's going to struggle to find a really consistent footing across the board. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated, so thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.